The US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has described President Putin's invasion of Ukraine as a strategic failure for Russia. His comments came as he arrived in Finland, months after it became NATO's newest member. Mr. Blinken said the invasion had weakened Russia diplomatically, economically and militarily. Let's have a listen now to some of what he had to say a short while ago.
Today what I want to do is set out this and the many other ways Putin's war of aggression against Ukraine has been a strategic failure, greatly diminishing Russia's power, its interests and its influence for years to come. And I'll also share our vision of the path to a just and lasting peace. When you look at President Putin's long-term strategic aims and objectives, there is no question Russia is significantly worse off today than it was before its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, militarily, economically, geopolitically.
That was Antony Blinken speaking a little earlier. Well, I'm joined now by Raphael Loss, who's an expert in European security for the European Council on Foreign Relations. Thank you so much for joining us, Raphael. So how do you think that speech will have gone down in Finland? Because while a lot of it was addressing the world, really, especially at the beginning, it was about reinforcing the ties with Finland.
Very much so. Finland is the latest addition to the NATO alliance. It submitted its application just last year following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And so there's been an intense diplomatic effort by the United States, but other allies as well, to integrate Finland into the alliance, to welcome it to this family that has spanned the Atlantic Ocean for the past 70 years and provided European security and Ukraine's support for the past 16 months of this onslaught.
And just how significant was Antony Blinken's visit to Finland?
Antony Blinken visited the Nordic countries this week. He went to Sweden first, then to Norway, and finally he made his way to Finland. All of this is in preparation of the NATO summit in Vilnius, in addition to the bilateral ties that the US is seeking to strengthen with these countries. The US is also looking more towards a Arctic posture. It is strengthened its military, economic, diplomatic engagement with countries of the Arctic Circle, and Blinken's visit to Finland is very much part of that as well. It's about strengthening the visibility of the transatlantic ties.
Yes, and Antony Blinken reinforced the importance of those. He talked a lot about it being a new era, and he also said that it would be unthinkable before Russia's invasion. How much do you think that was the case? Because it's interesting, isn't it, to look at Finland's attitude towards NATO before and after Russia's invasion?
I mean, Finland joining NATO eventually was pretty much unthinkable before this full-scale invasion by Russia of Ukraine. And it was largely due to public pressure on the Finnish government that finally the application was submitted. So the war that is happening in Ukraine, that Russia started in Ukraine 9 years ago, but intensified certainly in February of 2022, has produced a lot of dynamism in European security discussions. And one of those results is certainly Finland's and hopefully soon Sweden's membership in the NATO alliance.
Yes, and on the subject of Sweden then, given that Sweden is next to join, what difference do you think that will make to the strength of European allies and the position of Russia geopolitically?
Prior to Finland and Sweden's application to join the NATO alliance, a lot of NATO military planning focused on securing the three Baltic nations, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, from prospect of Russian military aggression. And that is a difficult military problem to solve because there's only a small land bridge between eastern Poland and Lithuania, the so-called Slovakian gap. With Finland's and Sweden's accession to the alliance, you now have a much broader picture encompassing all of the Baltic Sea, which makes reinforcing frontline troops much easier than before. And so from a Russian perspective, this complicates, of course, the military picture in Northern Europe. A lot of Russian ground forces are being sent to Ukraine to fight this war of aggression. But we can certainly expect Russia to reposture its forces after the war ends at some point, and to present a growing and sustained threat to European security order.
Raphael, thanks for your analysis.